Hello, it has been a couple of months since I did a reading wrap up, so I thought we could have a casual, nice, chill, casual talk, including all of the books that I've read in the last couple of months. In the last 2 or 3 weeks, I found some new favorites. So really, this is just an excuse for me to tell you all about these new favorite books of mine. I'm gonna try and quickly talk through all the other books so we can spend the most time talking about the good ones, okay? But to quickly get into all the other books I've read, number 1 is Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. This is about a Japanese woman who has worked at a convenience store, the same convenience store, for the last 18 years of her life, and her friends and family are worried about her because this is a dead-end job. Why is she so happy with this dead-end bum of a job? But for her, she loves it because it's very structured, it's very repetitive, and she likes that. She likes that she knows exactly what to expect, and also it pays her bills. So why would she want to get a corporate job, right? Then one day that changes. She meets somebody that kind of leads her down a different path. This was an interesting read. I feel like I relate to that aspect of this character where she's kind of asking, like, why would I don't want to be a lawyer. I like my job. I like what I do. I like the people that I work with. Good at it. I'm going to keep doing it. That's all I need. I don't need more money. I'm fine with where I'm at. Liked that aspect of this book. It does get a little bit weird. Does get a little bit weird with the person that she meets. It's a very unlikable person, and like I said, they lead her down a different path. It gets a little bit weird. Okie dokie. Next, The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi. I really liked this book. It's a piratey adventure that takes place in the Indian Ocean, and there's a fantasy element to this book that I quite liked. I think my favorite thing about this book is that it is set in the Indian Ocean. It's not your European Pirates of the Caribbean white pirates. You've got this more diverse cast of characters. You've got characters from the Middle East and Africa and South Asia. It's just a different kind of pirate story without being too different at all. I don't know. And also, did I mention the main character of this book? The captain of this pirate ship is a woman, which is kind of uncommon, and so that gives a fun spin to this story as well. So I really liked this one. I'm looking forward to reading any other books that come out in this series. Now, okay, Longborn. I have to talk about Longborn. This is a different perspective on Pride and Prejudice. This takes place in the Bennet household, but it's told from the perspectives of the Bennet family's servants. And so you're getting that take on the things that are happening to the Bennet family, as well as just learning what its life is like for these servants at this time in England. I thought that there would be a little bit more of a love story. Maybe it was the blurb on the back of the book that said, "What a lovely love story," or something along those lines. And I was like, oh, cute, a Regency romance. That'll be fun. The primary focus of this book was like the class differentiation between the Bennets and their servants. Right? Yeah, that was the main focus of this book. If you like Pride and Prejudice, I would recommend this book, even though it wasn't what I expected, and I don't like it when my expectations aren't met. But I think this was still very interesting just to see life from a different perspective at that same time as that Pride and Prejudice takes place. It is a good book. It's just not the love story I was expecting. All right, after that, to make up for the lack of love story in Longborn, I read Blackmore by Julianne Donaldson. This is a Regency romance. You know, they're childhood friends to lovers, but in between the childhood friends and the lovers part, his family doesn't want them to get together. So there is some yearning, there is some pining. They both want to be together, but they can't be together. And so if you like that and you like Regency romance, I think you'd like this book. It is really fun, really light. It's a romance. I love it. I read it in a day. It was a reread for me. And so again, it's just, if you just want that Regency time period drama romance, it's a good one. Good one. These next 3 books I'm just gonna mention very quickly because they will be featured in my next reading vlog. These books are The Grim Conclusion, which is the 3rd book in the Dark and Grim series. This is a trilogy of children's/middle grade novels that retell fairy tales with a dark twist. I think I liked it better than the previous 2 books. Next is Their Eyes Were Watching God. This is a classic about a young black woman in the 1920s and 30s, and she's just telling the story of her life and her yearning to find love, how she finds that love, and then how she loses that love. It does have a sad ending. I'll give you that little bit of a spoiler, but it is such a beautiful book. And last book that will be featured in this upcoming reading vlog is Iron Flame. This is the sequel to Fourth Wing. This book, if you haven't heard about Fourth Wing, it's about a war/military college in this fantasy world where all of the students at this college are taught how to ride dragons. Yeah, I also liked this one better than the previous book. That's all I'm going to say about that book for now. You'll hear more about it in another video. 3 more books to speed through before we get to the favorites, okay? I Who Have Never Known Men. This is a kind of a sad story. How do I describe this book? This book is about a young girl who, as long as she can remember, she's been imprisoned in this underground bunker with 39 other women. And one day, she and the other women have the opportunity to free themselves. So they free themselves and find themselves in this empty, desolate world. And they are wandering, trying to survive. So yeah, it's all about determination and resilience and survival. So that is I Who Have Never Known Men. It got me thinking. It made me sad. It made me anxious. It got me thinking. It made me feel a lot, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. But I liked that it got me to feel that deeply. Next, Where'd You Go Bernadette? This book, my dad recommended this book to me because my husband and I recently traveled to Seattle, and this book takes place in Seattle. I liked the experience of reading this book in Seattle. However, I did not really enjoy this book. Woman named Bernadette who just disappears. This is told from her daughter's perspective. It also weaves in like emails and stuff that she has sent to people woven into the story, and it's told mostly through that, with Bernadette's daughter kind of weaving in some commentary in between all of these emails. So that's what this book is about. Yeah, I didn't enjoy it because I couldn't connect with it, and I didn't really connect with it because there was one aspect that I could kind of sympathize with, maybe begin to understand, because she used to be an architect and she was designing this house, and she had this big idea of like doing this whole like eco-friendly thing where she uses all recycled materials, which is like super cool. I liked reading about that because I was like, hey, that's kind of cool. Through a series of unfortunate events, she has to give up this project. That just is a really big blow to her confidence. I've never had to give up a big project that I was working on because of some uber wealthy Hollywood star trying to sabotage my project. I don't relate to that. But the feeling of wanting something so bad and for whatever reason having to give that up because it's no longer what you want it to be, because it's becoming something that's doing more harm to you than good, and then being sad that you had to give it up, but also you had to because it was just that conflicted feeling. That's something I have felt. That was one small little part. And the rest of it, I feel like I was just rolling my eyes and asking, when are these middle-aged white ladies gonna stop complaining about stupid stuff? Moving on, Heartstopper Volume 5. I love Heartstopper. You know I love Heartstopper if you've been here before. So I recently picked up Volume 5 and I really liked it. I love that Charlie is making progress in his struggles that he's trying to overcome. He's becoming more confident. I loved seeing that. I came to appreciate Nick a little bit more. I got a little bit closer with Nick because he's going off to college, to university. He's worried about leaving Charlie. And that's something that I felt. I just worry a lot about the people I care about, romantic or otherwise. When somebody's struggling with something, I just want to be close to them. I haven't experienced all the same things that the people around me are experiencing, so I don't know exactly what to do, but if I can just be close to them, then like maybe they'll know that I'm there, that I'm supporting them, that I want to help them, that I'm ready to do whatever they want or need me to do to help them. The struggle that Nick is having in this 5th volume of Heartstopper is something that I feel like I relate to, and I liked this 5th volume quite a lot. Oh my gosh. I've been rambling about books longer than I planned to ramble about books at this moment in time, so I need to go. But I will be back. You will see me in mere moments, and we will talk about my new favorite books. Hello, we're back. The Night Circus. This was the first one that I read. Just a quick synopsis before I start gushing about it. This is about 2 magicians and their apprentices, and there's a competition between these 2 apprentices. The competition ends when one of the apprentices dies. The setting for this competition is at a circus, and so you have this kind of whimsical circusy setting. This story spans like a whole lifetime because it's a competition of endurance. So there's your little synopsis. Now I'm going to get into what I liked about this book, and that is the setting. Or not even the setting, just the way I felt. There are plenty of books where I read and it goes over my head. There are other books where I read it and I can see I'm watching the movie in my brain as I'm reading the words on the page. And then there's this. I not only am watching the movie in my head, but I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it and I'm seeing it. Does that make sense? Like, it just felt very real. It felt very tangible. And that was such a magical feeling for me, especially since I was like coming out of a reading slump at this time. And so like this kind of reminded me just how magical reading can be, that like it can really transport you somewhere completely different to an alternate version of our world where magic does exist. I needed to be transported when I read this, and it did just that. I really enjoyed that. I also really liked in this book, like I said, it's based around this circus that travels all over the world, and as it's traveling year in and year out, it collects this group of fans. They just love the experience of being at this circus, and one of these fans, he writes articles about the circus. And as fangirl myself, reading these articles that are kind of inserted throughout the story about the circus from like this outsider's perspective, this fan's perspective, that was something that I really related to. Those words and the excitement and the enthusiasm with which he's talking about the circus just reminded me of just like, I don't know, reminded me of why I have this YouTube channel and why I talk about books here, because I love stories. That was something that I just loved, and a character that I really connected to and related to. We're gonna get into this a little bit more when I talk about Starless Sea, which is another book by Erin Morgenstern. But Erin Morgenstern, in her books, there's love stories in both books that she's written, and they're all that like instant fairy tale love at first sight kind of love. When I read The Night Circus, I read that one first. I was swept up in the magic of it. I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, that's cool. That makes sense. Of course they fell in love at first sight. It made sense to me. It just added to the magic of it. It added to the like whimsy and the feel of it. Now let's move on to The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. I read that after I read The Night Circus. I also really loved it. Just know that going into it, I loved this book. One of the things I didn't like about it, actually maybe the only thing I didn't really love about this book, is that instant love, that like love at first sight love, because there are three love stories that you see over the course of The Starless Sea, and all three couples fall in love instantaneously. When there are three couples that fall in love that same way in one book, it's kind of a lot. And here's a quick synopsis of The Starless Sea before we get into all of the details that I love about it. We open with a young man. He's browsing the library. He finds this really old, dusty, leather-bound, it just looks really old, mysterious book, right? And so he checks it out, he takes it home, and he starts reading it. And one of the stories in this book is about him. How is my life in this old book that looks way older than I am? How is this happening? He falls down a rabbit hole trying to figure out where this book came from, how it could possibly include a story from his own life. He finds himself breaking into like secret societies and meeting some mysterious characters. This book also, the way it's written is like alternates between stories from that book that Zachary found in the library and Zachary's story of trying to figure out where that book came from. All of these stories come together in a way that I really liked. The main thing I loved about this book is the setting, the feeling, the atmosphere. Erin Morgenstern, it seems like she was really focused on the setting and setting an atmosphere that you could just, as a reader, you just get pulled into and you feel immersed in this atmosphere. The plot it's less important, I guess we'll say, to the experience, because these books are really more about the experience than the plot. If you need there to be a plot, I think you're gonna like The Night Circus more than The Starless Sea. And I liked the feeling, I liked the atmosphere of The Starless Sea better because it's all about books. It's all about stories and falling in love with stories and just wanting to escape into stories. It's almost like Alice in Wonderland if Wonderland was just this magical library where there's just endless stories to just be transported into. That's what The Starless Sea is. Yeah, I loved this book. It was so good. It was very fairy tale, like dark, mysterious fairy tale. You don't know exactly what's happening, but you get little breadcrumbs here and there. Like I said, it's like Alice in Wonderland. Another book that I feel like this feels very similar to is Piranesi. Nazy feels very similar to that, where you're not in, like, especially in the beginning, you're really not sure what's going on, but you're just along for the ride. You just want to see what happens because you're there. You like the vibe of what's going on. You like the setting. It feels a lot like Piranesi. I feel like this book is very rereadable. As I've been getting back into reading the past few years, and as I'm like trying to build up my book collection, I'm trying to think of books that I would want to reread. There are plenty of books I've read recently in the over the past few years that like I read. It was good for the moment, but I'd rather read new things. And this is a book that I am so glad is mine because I'm going to be rereading this. Like I said, the atmosphere, I want to be transported to that place again. And also because it is kind of mysterious and there are just hints and things that are referencing certain things. Like I feel like if you reread it, you're going to pick up on different references, different hints, and it's going to feel different the second time around. And yeah, this is for book lovers. This is for people who love stories, who just want to escape, who love that feeling of just getting sucked into a story, being transported, being immersed in a different place, a different time. I feel like between the two Erin Morgenstern books that I read and fell in love with recently, I feel like the Starless Sea is going to be a little bit harder for people to like than the Night Circus. Maybe it's the love thing. I think it also, another thing that I usually don't like in books, but I'll let it slide with the Starless Sea, is that this has kind of an ambiguous ending. You're not entirely sure if everything works out in the end. It just kind of ends. It's kind of like the movie Inception, how they just cut right before, the top spinny top thing falls over, and you're pretty sure it's gonna fall over, but you're not quite sure. It's kind of like that. I understand if you don't like the Starless Sea for that reason. Okay, now we need to talk about Legendborn. Okay, so I've read Legendborn and Bloodmarked. Quick synopsis for this series. This is a young adult fantasy series. You're going to hear me relate this to Percy Jackson a few times over the next few minutes. Here's the first Percy Jackson reference. It is like Percy Jackson, except instead of middle schoolers, we have juniors, seniors in high school, and college students. And instead of Greek mythology, it's Arthurian legend and the Knights of the Round Table. You have these 17, 18, 19-year-olds who are descendants of the Knights of the Round Table, and who are fighting demons in the name of those original knights, right? Our main character's name is Bree. She is a young black girl. In her first few days at UNC, she encounters several demons. These students, who are descendants of the Knights of the Round Table, are saving her from these things. And she goes to this secret society of Knights of the Round Table, is asking questions, trying to figure things out. She gets wrapped up into this competition to become a squire, and so she can figure out what's going on. There's also, she thinks that this Order of the Round Table may have been involved with her mother's death, and so she's trying to figure out how they were involved, what happened there, what the connection is there. That is the synopsis for this book. I related it to Percy Jackson when I was explaining it because after reading this book, I felt the same way I felt when I first read Percy Jackson. I love this book. For one thing, I like the action. I like that it is set in our world, but it has this fantastical element to it. It feels similar to Percy Jackson. There's also quite a bit of action in this book that feels similar to the quests and things that Percy and his friends are going on throughout the Percy Jackson series. So I like that. This isn't funny like Percy Jackson, and that's okay. I like that this is a little bit, it feels more serious. Part of that is that our main character, Bree, her mother has just died and she's dealing with that grief. There's a really big focus on her grief and her repressing those feelings. I liked that theme. I liked how they handled that, and I like how she grows over the course of these books and how her involvement with the Order of the Round Table and her entering this magical world, how that kind of helps her understand her grief. Minor spoiler warning here, but Bree is black. She is a descendant of slaves, and because of that, she finds out that her ancestors also had access to this same magic that the Knights of the Round Table did, but they just used it in a different way. I like that it brings in this magic into our world, right? But then it shows you that different people use it in different ways, different cultures, different races. People are going to be using it in different ways, and I liked that, and I like seeing how Bree, over the course of both books, she learns to kind of use it and use the magic in her own way. It's a mix of this learning from the Legendborn, also incorporating elements that she's learned from her ancestors. I thought that was really interesting. What time is it? Oh, I have to get back to work soon. Like I said, this made me feel like I did when I first read Percy Jackson, which is very high praise. Percy Jackson was probably in my top 3 books when I was younger. It's still up there. It's still up there. Don't get me wrong. But just the impact that it made on me when I was younger. I feel like this is having a similar impact on me now. And so I love this series. I am so excited. I am so ready for the 3rd one to come out. I know I'm late to this train, and other people who've already read this have been waiting for a couple of years already. How are you guys holding up? How are you surviving? I just barely read this and I have to wait 6 months. Are you kidding me? No, thank you. Hurry up, Tracy Dion. We need that book now. Those are my recent favorites. Those are all of my recent reads. Everything I've read in the last couple of months. And I've been talking a lot, so I'm going to stop talking now. And thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you for listening to me ramble about books. I'll talk to you in my next video. Bye.